All right. Hey, episode 45. This is it, right? This is another one. We are getting so close to 50, and it's episode 45 of Nobody Told Me with Mike and Blaine. I'm Mike Mylan and my partner, Blaine Birch. What's up, my man?
Oh, not too much. We got a rainy day here, so it's kind of dark down here. So hopefully the weekend's nice. It's supposed to be. So we'll see what happens.
What I wouldn't do for rain. I think we've had, if you look back, I'm going to say 17 days, it seemed like in the last 2 or 3 weeks of 100 plus.
Oh, man.
Straight up sun. If you look outside, you sweat. So don't even look out the window in Texas.
we have had some downpours here, and I actually ran out earlier today because we had these flower pots, these newer ones we had on the driveway, and I noticed they were full of water. So I guess I forgot I didn't put any holes in the bottom, so I was tipping them up, and I had a drill, and I was drilling holes in the bottom to try to get them drained, and just made a big mucky mess. But anyway, hopefully it won't kill everything in the pots.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Today, though, let me tell you the topic, because it has been me. I mean, you must have been right in my brain when you suggested this, but today's episode of nobody told me that my brain would run 24/7, right? No breaks. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Never ends. Yeah, it's yeah. Of course, that popped into my brain, and I'm sure every entrepreneur can relate to that. So, yeah. Before we kick it off, what are you drinking today?
Hey, I'll tell you what, I went right back to Texas again, right? I found another Texas beer from Karbach, which is out of Houston, Texas. And this is called the Crawford Bock, because where you hit home runs at Houston Astros Stadium is called the Crawford boxes. So this is the official beer of the Houston Astros. Now, all my friends in St. Louis, if you're listening to this, I still love the Cardinals. I'm not an Astros fan. Don't give me that. but I will still support a Texas team. So here it is, Crawford
Nice.
Bock.
Crawford Bock, nice. So today I went to one of our local breweries in Edmonton here, Change Brewery. They've got some really nice beers. In fact, probably head over there on our bikes this weekend and do a little stop here. This is called the Change Turbo Stout, but it's the Faro Turbo Stout. So Faro is a little sort of coffee shop, bakery, sandwich shop in Edmonton. And what they did is, I was just reading on the can, Faro made a bunch of cronuts, which I guess is, I don't know, kind of like a donut, I guess. And they ground them up and somehow used them in the beer with some lactose and a bunch of other stuff, and made a really nice beer right here in Edmonton. So Change Brewery, really nice brewery.
All right. So I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I mean, somebody call me out. I think you've done Change before. I think it's already on our featured breweries page on the website, mikeandblaine.com. Not sure. Man. Not sure. You might have been the first one to do 2 beers from the same brewery.
You know what? I think you're probably right. And in the liquor store the other day, I saw this and I went, I haven't done Change yet. And until you mentioned it, I always double check. I forgot to double check this time. I actually think you're right. I think I did their Tiger Balm last year. I actually just thought of that. That was well, you know, here's the Change. They're the first one to get doubled up on the show.
All right, so I'm going to call out Change right now. I'm like going, you got 2 mentions on our show inadvertently. Hey, holler back. Tell us what you think about that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can buy us a beer, because now people are buying us beer, and we'll feature you again on the show. You could get featured 3 times on the show.
You know what's funny? I was at a conference this past week, and I had a guy come up and says, I hope no one's bought you a beer yet, because I'm going to be the first. And I'm like going, oh man, you haven't heard the episode yet. Episode 44, Kirsten and Brager, they already did it. They beat everybody. But
we'll take it. He can get us to 10 if he gets really generous, or a half a dozen. He can get us to half a dozen, buy a couple beer, and we're at a half a dozen.
Yeah, so we're stuck at 4 as far as I know. And I think I changed the notification. Remember because they were bragging to me that night, saying, hey, we were the first to buy you beer. I'm like, what? Because I had the email set up to go to my spam folder.
That's
I never saw the notification. Yeah, never saw the notification. So, all right. So here's when it first hit me. My first little touch, and I don't think I've told anybody this. My first little touch in the business, I was a state trooper at the time. This is before I got into janitorial, where I made the clean break. I call that my first business, the janitorial business. But I also had one where I charged $100 an hour, right? And this is back in the 1900s.
That's what I started too. Yeah.
But as a state trooper, right as I left, and I was trying to get the janitorial business going, I had some attorneys ask me to do or be an expert witness on vehicle accidents. I had formal training, and I was one of the first, I think 6 or 7 folks put on what they call the Major Crash Investigation Unit for the Missouri Highway Patrol. And that means I had some accident reconstruction training where we would make scale diagrams and do some, pretty cool math about how fast things are going, what was the launch angle, how many times they flipped, those type of things. But we could fully explain how an accident occurred and what happened based on the evidence that was left at the scene. And I had done several just as a trooper, giving expert testimony on how accidents happen. Well, that's how I first started to generate cash to get into business, was just kind of a side hustle of, hey, I'm going to put it out there to the lawyers in the area. If you got some accidents where you need somebody to take a second look, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore though.
I was just thinking you might have been able to reconstruct my skateboard accident from a couple of weeks ago on my electric skateboard where I flew 30 feet.
I can find a GIF of that. So
I hope no one was recording that anywhere. My wife was watching. She was riding behind me on a bike, and I think she was less than entertained by my flight. I shouldn't even say my fall, my flight with a very large landing.
Here's the reason I tell that story, is because once I started to try to make that a business, I could not get it out of my head. I may have charged somebody $100 an hour, but that was when I was physically doing something like writing the report or making the drawing or preparing for testimony by reading, reading other reports. But it was still in my head all the time, not only just, about the accidents themselves, but it was, how do I get this out to more people? What does my logo look like? What is my, what should I be? And I think I called it the Crash Team or something like that.
Nice.
That was the name of the little company I did on the side.
Well, and it's when I worked for someone probably like you. I worked for someone a couple of years at university, and that was kind of it. I haven't worked for anyone since. Contracts and things like that along the way here and there, but really just had my own businesses almost the entire time. And if I think all the way back, I'm probably thinking, there are probably times you'd feel like you'd bring something home from the office when it's not your business, right? It's not to anywhere to the level. If you ever bring something home from the office and you're working for someone else, it's significantly less than when it's your baby. And not only your baby, your risk, your dollar, your responsibility. And the bigger the business gets, the more you take it home and have to do your best to separate yourself out, because suddenly it's like, I've got a bunch of people and they're relying on me for their mortgage and for their houses, their kids. They're like, it starts to add up, and that's, so it has the stresses there, but you're also thinking every minute, it feels like every minute they have, how do I grow? What's that next move? How do we do this? How do we do that? And it's really hard to shut off.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you this. Have you ever where you couldn't tell if you were asleep or not? Right? Because it's like you work a whole shift while you're laying in bed. And I'm like, did I sleep or did I just work in my brain all night long? I can't tell.
Yeah. We've all, I think, had sleepless nights, but it's the nights where you got stuff in your brain and you sort of fade in, and all of a sudden you're awake and you're thinking about it. So I've probably been dreaming about it, and then you're back in and out and in and out. And it just, it's sort of a never ending cycle. And, I think for entrepreneurs, a lot of times it's like you wake up in the morning and think, oh, man, I had a good sleep last night. It's like you want to congratulate yourself because it can be tough sometimes.
Well, and I think I put that in the description is, hey, those restful nights become fewer and fewer, right? When you get into the business, especially if you got a new project or something that you're really intent on doing, you start to just think about it 24/7. I mean,
Yeah.
I even think about this, and I apologize to anybody who has ever caught me doing this. You're telling me a story and I'm 100 miles in the other direction thinking of something else. And if you've caught me doing that and just not called me out on it, believe me, I've probably done it to you, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's you get something in your head, and I've always, the nights. There's nights when it can be tough to sleep, uh, and I've read the people that are the sleep experts and all that, and I just kind of laugh. I'm like, you guys have no idea. Like, you want it quiet and you want it dark and you want to do this and you want to do that. Yeah, you know what happens when it's quiet and dark? It's like my brain is like a chainsaw, boom, and it's going, and there's no stopping it. And so it's the classic. Well, you just make it quiet and dark. Yeah, that is like fireworks in my brain for the rest of the night. That's just how it works, man.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
So are you the type of guy that can get up if something's really on your brain? Not maybe get up, but maybe have a notepad or have something right next to the bed where you can jot something down?
Yeah, I used to do that for a lot of years. I actually did have a notepad there, and I would jot stuff down, thinking, because it gets it. Hopefully the idea is it gets off your brain, and now you can go to sleep. But I think I started to you almost get into the habit of you lie down in bed, and it's like, no, I'm thinking of stuff because I want stuff for the notepad. Subconsciously, I think I started to think. So I finally, notepads out, and so occasionally I'm like, I got to remember this, but it forces me to get up, walk all the way down the stairs, all the way into the kitchen, go find my phone or whatever and tap it in. So I think it was a bit counterproductive for me because it turned into a habit of thinking and writing stuff down.
All right. So I think maybe 3 or 4 times in my whole life I've done that. Now I think about this a little bit different, because I used to get up in the middle of the night and go back into the office and do something. But I'm just talking about these little ideas where I don't really have to get out of bed, probably 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
All right. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago, talking to I don't know, client, and it's just it was an issue of, does this product fit right with what they're saying? Does it really do and fit in the market that they're trying to sell to? That's kind of the question we had. And somehow in the middle of the night, I think you said it on this show, those ideas just come to you, right? Just if I stop thinking about it hard, it'll just pop into your head, right? It just pops into your head. And that's what happened. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to get out my laptop. So I popped my laptop up on my knees, laying in bed, and I'm starting to just type down bullet point thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. So I put the laptop down. 10 minutes later, I feel like I'm up again. I'm like, oh, I got more to that. And I did that like 3 or 4 times in a matter of like 3 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of up and down. And so I was meeting with the client the next morning. And guess what? I couldn't read my notes. I could not figure out what the hell I was trying to say. So it was an incoherent thought. It was all over the place. I'm like going, yeah, I probably should have really thought this through before I told you about it, meaning Mr.
Yeah.
Client.
I can relate to that, because I do know there were times that I would wake up and look at my notepad and go like, what the hell is that? Like, and because at the time you think it's brilliant. You've solved the big crisis in the world. And then you wake up the next morning, it's like, that's just, I don't even know what that is. Right. Like it's, but the thing that, so that's probably the other reason that I'm like, notebook, no, it's gone. Just ignore it. But the other thing you said is when the ideas come to you, and that's the thing that I've found a lot of times is, for me, it's popping on my bike. And so sometimes I'll be like just battling something, I can't wrap my head around it. Just go for a really hard, chewing the bike, and just come back. And at some point it feels like it'll pop into my brain. And I think it's because suddenly you let go of the conscious, and the subconscious starts figuring it out, and it's one of the things also that I remember telling myself, which would sometimes help me to get to sleep, is reminding myself that, I can stay awake and think about it, and it's not going to come to any good. If I go to sleep, my subconscious might actually solve the problem. least I tell myself that. And at least it helps me convince myself to go to sleep, right?
Yeah, well, and I agree with you. Here's the thing: in your subconscious, or maybe you're partially awake, partially asleep. Yeah, remember, if you're even in a dream little state, there's no boundaries in your dream. So you could solve the problem a lot easier. And then you wake up and go, wait a second, I can't talk to a butter knife. That's never gonna work.
You can, you just might not answer back.
I mean, but something silly like that, where you're like, in the real world, that won't work because there's gravity, or we drowned underwater, or something like it. It worked perfectly in your dream. So that's fun. The other thing about that is, I think you're not truly exhausted if you're staying up 24/7 going like that, right? I mean, like you're getting on your bike, you're exercising. That's when I know when I sleep better and I don't have all of those issues. Having that restful night, the more often I'm working out and I'm physically exhausted, even if it's just working in the yard or stuff like that. When I tire out my body, chances are my brain shuts down too.
It helps a lot. And for me, I've just tried to get very disciplined about shutting, not working at night, not working on weekends. You always do some here and there, but I know early on in my business, like I would be, that's just what you do. You're working kind of all the time. But what I found is, people say, well, I'll work 80 hours a week. I'm like, yeah, you know what? 30 of them are productive, because you can't do it. Everything fatigues. And it's like, if you are dialed in and you are sharp, you'll do more in 40 hours sharp than you'll do in 80 hours where you're just like, it's like you're in a zombie mode the entire time. And so I really try and get to the end of the day and go, here's my line, and, be out in the evening, get exercise, do things that are away from work. That's where the subconscious will help, get going. I sleep better, even though I'm not the best sleeper. And I think overall it makes me much more effective, much more. And this is beyond a marathon. Running a business and doing a startup like this, it's like I've always said, it's not a marathon. It's like you're walking around the world. You have to be fresh. You can't sprint and try and sprint for 5 miles, and hope you're going to make it. Like, no, man, you're going to be doing this for years. You have to be sharp. You have to be on point all the time. That means you have to be rested, and you have to be, your brain has to be working.
All right. So can you look back, right, to the times when you're like, oh man, my brain will not shut down. Can you look back and kind of pinpoint a theme, like, oh, when I'm looking at this situation, maybe it's a contract, maybe it's a new product feature, maybe it's can I make payroll? Right? Can you look at a theme where you tend to be more active with your brain than other times?
Yeah, I think I could probably point to 3. One is money. If you're looking at a potential shortfall, cash flow issue, if you don't get paid this, it's hard to make payroll, whatever. That's one that'll absolutely keep me up. Number 2, some sort of staffing issue. That usually is like a struggling staff member, some sort of that can weigh on me, just to keep the brain going. And then number 3 is excitement, like a big opportunity, a big event. It's like, man, this is a great, that then it's like that. And that's sometimes the worst one. It's the best one in a way, but it's also the worst one, because as soon as you give an entrepreneur a little bit of, that opportunity, it's your brain can go into overdrive and just overeat, because you're just going, right.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I mean, I war game the heck out of all those scenarios, right? I mean, like, what if, and I can get 3 or 4 decision triggers down the road. Like, well, if they do this, then I can do that, and then we can have this conversation, and then maybe later on, this will happen. And I'll replay that over, and it's like I'm playing a war game against myself, which is, this is what I would do, and try to come to a situation. But as with anything in my life, no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
They did that whenever I was thinking it's going to be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's anything that's a lot of those ideas, they turn into, how am I going to do it? which brings me right into, like, I'll just sort of plug here, but into dry run, and I'll go in and I'll start modeling things out and go, okay, how do we do this? We want to expand the team, but it has a cash. And it's like, what if, and best, worst, likely, all these things. And it really helps me understand the spectrum of bad to awesome and where you could fit. Like you said, it's never going to be 100% accurate, but you're weighing those things prepares you to be able to react to things and to adjust to things and figure things out. And it moves you forward, right?
Yeah, it's funny. All right. And we'll plug dry run because it's a perfect segue, because in my presentation at the conference this week, I put a stat in there. It's like 49%. I forget the number now right off the bat, of small business owners have lost sleep because of either payroll issues or wondering about if they can pay a bill.
Yeah. And then there's 52% that lied about it.
Yeah, that's right. Because you always do. And you will. It's kind of natural. So, I mean, and by the way, we are sponsored by Blaine Birch's company, Dry Run, which is one of the most fantastic cash flow forecasting tools out there on the market.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the plug. Yeah.
Throw got stuck on cash flow tool when I said that. And, well,
yeah.
To compete with Blaine.
Yeah. But back in the day. And I'll do a little brief at the end if you guys are curious what it is. Otherwise, check out dryrun.com. But it is something that, like, it's part of the reason I built the product, but it's also why I'm in there all the time is to figure out where you're going. But it is also the thing, like, what helps you sleep at night when you have those nagging feelings. And in a finance way, it's like, okay, I can get into dry run and I can model something and go, okay, I know exactly where we're going. I got a plan where, like, and as soon as you have that plan or you understand where you're going, it calms you down, you can sleep better. And that goes for a lot of other things that you're battling in business. Stop and come up with your best, worst likely scenario or whatever it is, and address it head on in your mind, on paper, whatever it is, because it's going to help. Otherwise, it's just that engine's going to go and it's never going to end.
Yeah. So, all right. So you mentioned a couple scenarios like money, right? Money problems, staffing problems, maybe excitement about something else. I'm also a checklist guy. Like, I've got to do this, this, and this. And sometimes it's like just stuff I got to do tomorrow, or it's overall to get this project done, or to get prepared for this conference, or here's some new feature things we're trying to put into a product. I'm a list guy. Just keep going down, what I miss. Yeah. So that's another thing kind of occupies brain space.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure you've been like me, suddenly, bolt up right awake at 3 a.m. Shit, I forgot to send that email. Like, how many times does that happen? Like, do I do it now or do I do it in the morning? Will I remember in the morning? Like, I won't want them getting the email at 3 a.m, but at least if I write it down so I don't forget, right?
All right. So here's what happens to me on excitement, because you mentioned that one. Yeah. If I'm excited about something, especially if it's going to happen the next day, I don't need an alarm clock. It's something that clicks in my brain and all that just says I'm probably up 3 hours earlier than I should be, because I'm like anxious to not where I'm excited about what's going to happen. I'm more nervous and have anxiety around missing it or being late or being embarrassed, right? Rushing around in the morning. So there's more anxiety about being embarrassed. Yeah, there is about the cool thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I find with my role to be, I know exactly like yours is there aren't a lot of days where there isn't, like, you can kind of fade into the background. Like, you always have to be on, and you're always like, there's always something. You have a pitch, you have a meeting, you have this, you have to be here, you have to be at this event. You have to be on the entire time. And so that's, I think, elevates the sort of anxiety, because it's never seemed to be the one that's just like, yeah, I just got to show up for it. It always seems to be, I have to be the lead and be on and be, everyone's looking to me. So I don't have the luxury of just sort of, showing up in my jeans and whatever. Right.
Now we've talked about like the business side of the house, right? We're thinking about payroll. We're thinking about those type of things. What about your personal life? Do you always just, go through the same type of exercise with your brain, just on personal situations?
Oh, that's a good question. It feels like my personal life is the part where I get to relax a little bit, right? And that sort of helps calm down the brain. But there's always stuff like there's always things that'll happen um in the world, and like in your, family, friends, whatever. And it's like, yeah, like those of course can keep you up, especially if it's a negative thing, or like you said, something really exciting can do the same thing, right?
Well, and I had it differently, right? So I had three teenage daughters at the time. I mean, they're all in their 20s now, so I don't do this as much. But man, when they were teenagers, and then I had one that was sneaking out of the house all the time, it just seemed like it was always a distraction to business, because I was always thinking about getting called into the school. Are they sneaking out? What are they doing? Or those type of things. So
Yeah.
I think more now. I'm grateful, right? Because they've all kind of blossomed into these beautiful women that make good decisions. I've got three, grandchildren now. So I think more about their future than I did maybe 10 years ago. I think more about, what they're like as adults, and, all the wishes and blessings that I have for them, and what I can do personally to be better in their lives. So I still think about it, not quite as much as I used to, though.
Yeah. It's the other side of it that you kind of forget, right? And it's interesting that when things can happen in like the real world, it can be dramatically change things, dramatically. Like it can make the business side go very secondary very, very quickly. And like we've had that in my family too, right? So
if you're watching on YouTube, I just had three women come in the front door and go towards the back of the house on a Friday afternoon. I'm sure wine's involved. So, but we'll see. If you got background noise, it's probably that.
Yeah, I was like, hey, we can see through your door now. It's just like people going by and all that.
And you know what? They still got plastic on it. The window glass, because they got to paint the doors. And I'm waiting for some baseboard to come in, because when we put the new door in, the baseboard didn't quite line up. So we got some different baseboard. So.
That's the personal life. You get, it's always going on, right? It's always going on. So.
Okay. And think about this. I have a big backyard project going on right now. We're putting in a pool, a deck, a pergola, and some landscaping. I'm still going through that checklist, right? It's like things that I want to see, how is the crew working? Do I think they're fast enough? Do I think it's good enough? What's it going to look like in the future? So if it isn't business, it's probably that right now that's jumping into my brain.
And I like, I have so many little projects around the house. I know you're going to scold me right away. Projects around the house. And when I get to the weekend and I've had a long week, and like here we're at Friday night, and like, I don't want to do that. Like, we're going to get on our bikes tomorrow. We're going to go for brunch, and then we're going to go on a little mini pub crawl to some breweries. Like, that is awesome. That's how I want to spend my weekend, not doing grunt work around the house. But I end up doing a lot of that stuff around the house, because it seems like oftentimes I have this belief that I can hire someone, but I know how to do it better. That's probably a little cockiness, but I end up doing some of that stuff anyway. So
I had some news to share with you. I forgot about that. This week at the conference, I talked with, the managing editor, I think is his name or his title, at Insightful Accountant. And they wanted to add this podcast to their directory. So we're going to work out those details. Yeah, right. I mean, I'm like, oh, wait a second. This is a perfect place to tell you, because I hadn't talked to you about it yet.
That's awesome. And I love those guys. They're awesome over there. I haven't talked to them in a while, but they're back. I haven't been to any conferences in years now. I've had my free COVID pass. That's the one benefit, is I haven't had to fly all over the place. But it's coming. But now I remember, it's like all these people I get to catch up with, which is kind of fun.
Well, yeah. So Gary has started a new podcast, and I think he told me I was guest number three or something on the podcast. And but they've built a mini directory of things that they like, and they thought this was a good addition.
Nice. That's awesome. I'd love to be on that.
Right. Yeah. That's what happens when you tell people. So we're up over 200 5-star reviews. They're like at 220 now or something like that.
Yeah, and we've been getting some real solid downloads. It's good. The momentum's building. We're going to own the world in no time here.
Yeah, so I mean,
or we'll get a few more listeners, maybe a free beer.
Maybe free beer. And I'll tell you, if you haven't checked this out yet, and this is me kind of plugging the website and the show, go to mikeandblaine.com, mikeandblaine.com. you can connect and subscribe to our shows from there on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. I think we're in all the major directories now. Two big buttons. Actually, there's three cool things you can do while you're on there, right? Outside of just listening to the podcast or seeing the YouTube videos. You can buy us a beer, which is really, I think the real actual name of the app that we use is called Buy Me a Coffee.
we
said no, it's for beer. I think our URL is Buy Me a Coffee / it's for beer.
Yeah, there you go. You go directly there. You can find us right there.
That's right. So I think it's a $5 increment. So if you haven't done that, buy us a beer. And, if you put it in the notes, kind of what you want. And now if we can find it, we'll bring it on here, if it's reasonable. The other thing is we got a merch shop. And I think you and I promised that on the 50th, we would wear t-shirts.
Yeah, right? I got my t-shirt.
Yeah, he's got his t-shirt right there. I'll wear a different one so we don't have the same one on. But yeah, we got a merch shop. You can get all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, from jackets to shirts to a coffee mug, something like that. And then lastly, you can buy our books, right? And I've had a big upsurge in sales lately. And I think it's because I've been speaking at conference and going to conferences. But yeah, I've had a lot more books sold over the last 2 months. Nice. Yours is always a good seller. Everybody likes the pandemic cash flow.
Well, except I think the name, because the name came years before the pandemic, and now I think people think it's related to the pandemic, and they're tired of the pandemic. So I'm not sure that's going to help me anymore. I think I may have to rename it. Right. Just to avoid the stigma that was not related at all. So
see, there's an unintended consequence of COVID, right? Kills your book.
Okay, you killed it. It was up and down. It was a big boost, and then it's probably people are like, I don't want. It's like Corona beer when they had a big slump right at the start because nobody would buy a Corona beer because it was. And I'm convinced. You know what? All the news stories and everything are like people wouldn't buy Corona beer, and they kind of make it sound like people thought they'd get Corona from it. And I will tell you, I think it's completely different than that. I think people at the start of the pandemic refused to buy Corona beer because they did not want their buddy to go, oh, Corona beer, we're gonna give me Corona, right? That is why they didn't buy it. It's like, I can't stand the stupid joke that's going to come from Bob over here. They're not that dumb. They didn't think they're getting Corona from it. It's like, I'm not putting up with the bullshit from my neighbor or whatever, right?
Well, come on, weren't you one of the people that wiped off your grocery bags and stuff like that when they came in?
What I did do is I started, and I've kept it up, is I started wiping the top of my beer cans. And I don't know, like just, and I started to, because then I started to go, yeah, those are gross. So I'm like, I wipe all the top of my beer cans. Early on in the pandemic, we would try and be smart, and they're telling me you should wipe your stuff. Okay, we'll wipe our stuff. The only thing that kept up was top of those beer cans are sitting in like some kind of big dungy, like gross, dusty place. I should be wiping those off. So that's one thing that stuck is I wipe off the top of my beer can. So
yeah, well, I'm convinced that's why I don't get sick, because germs can't swim.
There you go. Exactly. So where are we? We got way off topic here, but that's good. That's good. This is good. This is for Friday night. This is how we will shut off our brains for the weekend. And it's one of the bits of advice that I give newer entrepreneurs, that one of the things I go to almost all the time that just pops my brain is, guys, like, it is. And when I say guys, it's not like I'm not saying it's just men. That's just how I reference people, I think, in groups. It's a long haul. Make sure you're taking time for yourself and you're recharging your brain, because you can't do these. I think there's too much of this legend of entrepreneurs doing 80 hours a week, and Elon Musk won't do anything but work. And they're like, well, that sounds kind of miserable. And I bet you it's 90% bullshit. But boy, sprint and work hard. And when that you're during your work hours, go and be incredibly highly efficient, and then take a break. Give your brain that break. It really is important.
Hey, have you figured out when your peak hours are? Like, have you ever thought about that? I'm most productive between X and Y. You know what that is?
Yeah, I think for me, it's first thing in the morning until about if I slow down. Some days I find I don't. Some days I'll look on like, oh, 5 o'clock, I better, start slowing down. But if I do slow down, it seems to be around that 2:30 in the afternoon. And just like that little bit of an energy. And I don't do, I'm saying I should, like, I don't really take coffee breaks, take a like 30-minute lunch break. That's it. Just go. Because I tend to be the type that sprints. Like when I go, and I'll go till I hit a wall. If there's days where I start to lag a bit, that's where I'll get up and pop upstairs, grab a glass of water or something. But some days that's where I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to hop my bike and I'm going to just hammer around for half hour, 40 minutes, come back and get going again. I should do more of that. I probably don't do it enough.
See, I think my prime hours, I think I'm the most productive, probably 9 to maybe 3. But if I really narrow it down, I think it's right after lunch for me. Most people get tired. I think I get that little break. I've got kind of got organized during the morning. And then if I'm going to really sit down and get to a heavy task, there's ones you usually look at and go, I don't want to start that.
Yeah.
But usually if I start that right after lunch, I get at lunch, I get myself psyched up. So when I get in there, I'm sitting on this, I'm closing that door and I'm just going.
Yeah. I find the same thing, like right first thing in the morning, we have our stand-up meeting with the team. And right after that, go. And I'll go till I'm like, oh, got to take a quick break for lunch. And then right after lunch, I can just kind of keep that momentum going. And if I do drag down, like I said, it's at 2:33 where I'll start to go, that energy can start to lag. And not every day. And I don't know why. Some days I'm like, I just power through and don't even notice. Right.
And I think it's important for you to figure out your own, right? When are you most productive? When do you like to work? Because I think that's where people get into that. Yeah, I put in 80 hours, but I'm really just sitting at the desk for 30 of them.
Right? Yeah, you're staring out the window or whatever.
What I found interesting is, at Finnegraph, we had folks that would come in right around lunchtime, but then they might be there till midnight. And it's like something happened with these guys that can write code. They put on their headsets. And something happens from about 3 to 11 and they just crank through it. And I think it's the lack of distraction, which means all the way through the day, guys like me running around and I'm loud and I'm pumping people up and, cracking jokes. Those guys just want to look at that screen, put the headphones on and go.
Yeah. My hours used to be a little bit more like a little random, and I was kind of like, if I'm ready to go, I'm gonna go. If it's an evening, I'm gonna go. If I got energy, I'm gonna do it. And I forced myself years ago into do a solid work day, but keep it during work hours. And I think in the long term for most people, that's going to be healthier because you have that outside life, like the rest of the world, your family, friends, everything. A lot of them are probably have their evenings free or their weekends free or whatever. If you get into a habit of work, it's like you're working in a different time zone. It's like, well, I'm living in a different time zone, even though, I'm living in a different time zone 8 hours away. So I think there's the productivity, but I think it's also the longevity of, is that going to grind you down? Are you going to start getting resentful? Or are you actually just going to enjoy life a little bit too? Right. So.
We didn't really talk about that, right? Like what are some of the terrible things by doing that? Because I always look at it as a good thing. I'm always kind of working. I'm trying to solve problems. I'm trying to think through something. You're getting extra value out of me after hours thinking about your project. I haven't really put much thought into how bad it could be for a person. Me, like not getting enough sleep. Maybe that anxiety builds to the point where it's part of my life, and maybe it's too much. I mean, I'm not there, but I've known guys that have panic attacks, and they describe them as some of the worst things they've ever been through in their life. I can't imagine, but they can't distinguish between a heart attack and a panic attack.
Yeah,
right.
It's there's I think there's all sorts of dangers from mental health to also just your wife going like, are you listening? Like, are you there? Yes. I heard what you said. Usually is, can you add this to the grocery list? But I totally just blanked on that.
You said your color's red. You like red. No, that's not what I told you, Mike.
Yeah. I swear you said it. That's why we got a blue couch. Yeah, I think it's important because it's also because entrepreneurs, you get driving and you go, and sometimes you got to like remember there's people around you. You have to, you got to be involved and you got to be, and sometimes that's really hard to let go of the stress and the anxieties and the issues and everything that you're dealing with, and that affects everybody around you as well. And I that's the thing that I think I've sort of come to the conclusion is it helps to have sort of a regular schedule. It helps to, you know, um, work hard, but work hard in this space. It helps to try and, set that other stuff aside, um, to build up that sort of work-life balance for you and make sure that you're ready for the long haul. But it's also for all the people around you, right? Like it's just, kind of shitty if you can't get your brain off of anything all the time, right?
Yeah. So, all right. So here's what I think I learned today, right? One is, that the entrepreneur's brain just works. It's always kind of working, always trying to look for a solution, even when you don't think you're actively doing it, your subconscious kind of takes over.
Yeah.
But then what I heard you say was you've got to take a break. You've got to find the time to just break that cycle, whether it's get on a bike, because as we've said in the past, you've said in the past, sometimes that's when it comes to you, right?
That's
Especially
when the answer comes. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
just
If you're really stuck, don't push harder, like relax your brain and the answer will come to you. It's amazing how many times this happened to me. And yeah, I really firmly believe that you need that balance. You need that off time because that's going to make you 1,000 times more effective in your on time. And it's also not going to make everybody around you miserable.
Yeah, that's right. So, all right. So, hey, this is number 45. We're going to put this one in the books. And again, your brain is never going to shut down. It's going to go 24/7. You've got to find a way to put it into your life on what's productive and helpful and what's destructive in your life as well. So,
Yeah.
Blaine, tell them to go to mikeandblaine.com and tell them about Dry Run.
Yeah, go to mikeandblaine.com, check us out, go to dryrun.com. And that's a place where, especially right now, we know the markets, the business community is struggling. We're even hearing it from some of our partners with some of their clients, how they're struggling. Dry Run can help you figure out where you're headed in the future, make much smarter decisions. Go to Dry Run and help you with the cash management, financial modeling. And if you're CPA or CFO, we're going to help you advise those clients much more efficiently, help many more businesses, and be able to spend your time talking with your clients, not wasting your time in a spreadsheet. And I also want to say, thank you, Sea Change. You made me do Sea Change twice. So I'm you got lucky. You got lucky. I did it, featured you twice. I'll have to remember next time, check my list.
There you go. And baseball season, the Houston Astros and Karbach. Okay. Thanks for being with us today. And Blaine, we're going to see you again next week, buddy.
Next week, 46. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everyone for joining us, and see you next week, Mike.